telling my story. Vasculitis is such a crazy disease. There are various forms of it. There are various things that happen to you with vasculitis. It sounds like a simple word, but it really doesn't describe kidney failure and breathing problems and brain issues and neuropathy and all the things that come with it. So is there a better way to tell our story? I mean, I have family and friends who remember that I was sick, but don't remember with what or how or why. So is there am I wrong to focus on that all the time, or is there a better way to script it so that it's I don't know. Any thoughts you have on that? Dana, you want to start with this one?
No, I want Sarah to start with this one.
Okay.
I think Sarah has a very elegant and concise way of talking about this.
So, I mean, one of the things that I kind of put this conversation into like two categories, right? I put it into the acquaintances that kind of know, like you said, Kathy, is like, they kind of know I'm sick. They know something's going on. And then I have the family member, friends, close people that really need to understand it, right? I mean, they really need to know the intricacies of it a little bit more than these guys over here. So, I mean, with the acquaintances kind of, you know, 3 people removed kind of folks, I mean, I kind of put it into the language of like, you know, it's about blood vessels. You got blood vessels all throughout your body, and wow, I mean, what doesn't touch a blood vessel in your body? So it's going to be affecting a lot of different things within my body. And it's not going away. I mean, it's a chronic thing that is going to be in my life, you know, from here on out. There are going to be good days and bad days. There are going to be times when I'm hopefully in remission, and times when I'm not, you know, and things like that. But just to know that it's systemic, it's not going away. And there may be days when I'm feeling great and days that I'm not. And I just kind of leave it at that. But I think for the other people over here that need to understand it a little bit more intimately, it's a constant reminder, because they have to live with all of the weirdness and all of the different kind of symptoms that are going on. I used to tell this story as like with my husband. It really did not take him. It took about like 2 years for him to really fully wrap his brain around what was going on. The treatment, you know, who I was seeing. I mean, it was so funny because he said like, and who are we seeing today? Which system doctor are we seeing today? You know, I mean, so it was a constant re-education for those folks, because I think they needed to understand it more deeply than these people over here. Because if I was having really severe pains in a certain part of my body, he needed to know, okay, you know, here's what we need to do to address this right now. He needed to know the ins and outs of it a little bit more. To this day, there are certain family members that just don't quite get it. And it's a constant re-education for them. And I think that's one of the big pieces of advice I would give newly diagnosed patients is like, your first description of this ain't going to stick. That it's going to be a constant re-education for some folks. And it's frustrating, and it's there. And, you know, I think just, you know, sticking with it and deciding what level of disclosure you want to give to certain people, I think is key.
I think that's a really good point, Sarah, is that you kind of have to have in your pocket kind of an elevator speech. You know, if I have to tell you what's wrong with me, this deeply complex issue in 20 seconds, say, because people don't need to know all that. They really don't want to know those kinds of things. And so then you can kind of let them be your guide. You can, you know, answer whatever questions they have after the elevator speech. That's beautifully put.
Yeah, that was great. That was a great help. I think I'm learning more every time I listen to you two today. You know, Sarah touched on this a little bit about caregivers and a spouse, a parent, a family member, a partner, a parent. let's talk a little bit about the stress on the caregiver. What can caregivers possibly experience from somebody in their life going through vasculitis? Is it normal to have resentment, guilt, anger, that sort of thing? Either of you want to start with that?
Dana?
Absolutely. Yes, it is normal to have all of those things. And I would really recommend, so I'm a palliative care social worker, and palliative care, in my role, I go into people's homes. I do home visits with a nurse practitioner partner. And we really see the whole family as our patient, not just the gal in the chair. And so it's so important to validate the resentment and validate the fear and the anxiety. Everybody's life is upside down. There's just no denying that and no minimizing that. And so I would really recommend, of course, because I'm a clinician, that you seek out help, you seek out community, you seek out people who have gone through this before, who are going through it, that you can talk to without your partner, without the patient in the room, because there are going to be things that you want to say that could potentially, hurt feelings and things, and that's perfectly normal. But you should definitely seek out somebody who can validate those things for you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it kind of goes back to, the resentment that I've seen. It really stems from that identity question. And, you used to be able to do this. Why aren't you able to do this now? And that was tough because, again, you had those kind of rules of engagement between you and your caregiver, who's now your present caregiver, but maybe was a different definition before. And I think that's where it was difficult in my experience to redefine what my new normal was. And my caregiver had to kind of buy into that new normal too, and to accept the fact, yeah, that is your new normal. I think the other thing that's particularly hard with kind of the caregiver question is burnout, and the whole idea of like, where do I draw my line? I want to be able to give you the support that you need. I want to be able to be there for you. But where are those healthy boundaries and that boundary negotiation for how I can help you in what situation, so that you're not like getting resentment on the other side. Why aren't you caring for me more, kind of thing is, I've seen it as a kind of a typical reaction to that caregiver dynamic. So the resentment can go both ways. And I think everyone kind of opening up those lines of communication, like you said, Dana, and having that space to be able to discuss freely what's going on, and then creating a conversation space to say, here's my boundary. Here's what I can and can't do at this point. And on both sides. And I think that's just a really healthy way of addressing some of that resentment.
Really great points. And I like, Dana, when you said that the caregiver should also have an opportunity to talk to somebody without the patient in the room. I never actually thought about that because I was so focused on myself, obviously. But I think that that's an outstanding comment. I do remember going through, my sister recently had breast cancer, and I went with her to meetings and with doctors, and they talked about this support is available for your spouse. This support is available for your teenage son. You should look into this. This group does this. Wow, we never hear those things in the vasculitis world, or I didn't. That wasn't my experience, but so important. And we can make these things available to ourselves. We just needed to know that it's okay to do this, I think. I think if it's okay, anybody want to add any final thoughts to that before we move on to some possible strategies?
I mean, I think, and maybe this is kind of a nice segue to some of the strategies, but to your point, Kathy, is that, the resources are out there, and I think it takes a certain amount of effort on our part to seek them out, and to know that they are so incredibly valuable. And my mental health support from Dana she is part of my care team. And to really see them as part of your care team, the holistic kind of view of how you're approaching. I mean, it's a systemic disease, so the approach should be systemic. So I think that's one of the things that I would definitely say as we move forward and talk about different strategies and different resources, is to see this as part of the overall care of yourself as a patient with vasculitis.
So true. Moving us along now to some strategies that maybe could achieve greater emotional health and manage our illness. I'm just going to start on the first one and then let you guys take over from there, if that's okay, only because the first one we have here is add a mental health expert to your team of specialists, seek counseling or therapy. You know, as I've said, I never considered doing this. And one thing that we haven't talked about so far today is that when a person gets diagnosed with vasculitis, very often they are very, very, very sick when it happens. And then you get given the statistics of the fact that it's not curable, that it's treatable, and all of a sudden you're confronting mortality. And, you know, to be somebody who was, you know, an athlete at 50, and then all of a sudden I'm told, you know, I could die. I so needed a counselor. Mm-hmm. I'll let you all move forward from there with these strategies that you've come up with. Dana, you want to start for us?
Well, I want to dovetail on that. I think that, of course, it's devastating news to get a diagnosis like this. And oftentimes you have a patient will have an underpinning or a pre-existing condition of anxiety or depression. And so it kind of adds to that and builds on that. And then it becomes very confusing about what is reactive, because I got this bad news. And so, of course, anybody's going to feel depressed or anxious. And what is an exacerbation of something that might be going on chemically? I mean, these are questions that are not easy to answer, and it's not easy for professionals to answer. But certainly you shouldn't be sitting at home struggling alone. You should be supported. And so feel free to be asking your professional team to support you in this.
Yep, that's great advice. How about the next one we have, which is ask your doctor about any medications or treatment to help you offset anxiety and depression. I actually didn't think about that side of it either. Was there something I could have been taking that would help me cope with medicine?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's part of that conversation, as we were talking about before, is that, you know, we don't know that there may be these kind of psychological or these mental health side effects to any medication. Well, is there something that you could take to offset that a little bit? Or is there some way that you could tweak that in your dosage? So definitely don't be afraid to explore that with your physician.
Some great advice. The next one, find a mentor or seek out another patient with vasculitis through the Vasculitis Foundation's virtual conferences, joining one of their Facebook groups. I can tell you that I, early on, seeking information, went to a Vasculitis Foundation conference that was in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And there was an opportunity for patients to talk to each other, like over a meal. And I met someone at that time, and we are, you know, great friends. Many, many, many years later, our diseases parallel each other with similarities that are crazy. And we've done things together. I visited her up in her home up in the Blue Ridge Parkway when she's vacationing up there. It was a huge help for me. Dana, you want to talk about how finding another patient or mentor can help a chronic illness person like someone with vasculitis?
Absolutely. It can help because, as we talked about before, the crazy making part of this illness is best addressed when you are talking with somebody else who says, you know, that was me too. You're not crazy. I felt that way. And how very comforting that is, and how validating that is to and to have other people say, well, did you try this or try that, and this helped for me, and it just completely helps with the isolation that comes with this.
So I hope my friend Nancy watches this so that she'll know.
Yes.
We did a Vasculitis Foundation webinar on starting a journal. Vasculitis Foundation actually has a really great journal or some other creative outlet to express yourself, share your story, either on an online patient forum such as the Mighty. We also did that story. And it's been recommended to watch videos on how to self-publish, just talking about it. Sarah, what do you think? Is this something that we should all do?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, this is kind of touching on my world. I mean, I realized at a certain point after I was initially diagnosed that, wow, I need to process this crazy in a different way. And so I actually started a Facebook site called Vasculitis Journey, and then that kind of morphed into the podcast, The Ride. So I needed that for myself, just to kind of process what was going on. And everyone's creative process may be different. I know that there are some folks that really do a good job with poetry. There's one patient that I know who is phenomenal at poetry, and she's able to express herself well that way. Another person, her way of expressing her and processing what she's going through, boy, she dives deep into, raising awareness within her own community, within her own school. So I think that, finding a way to process it creatively rather than destructively is huge for any patient. And it has brought a level of joy and comfort and acceptance that I don't think I would have achieved had I not done it. So for sure.
And in case you didn't catch that, Sarah has a great podcast called The Ride. I was interviewed on it.
Both of you were.
And so moving along to maybe practicing mindfulness or meditation, Dana, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, there are a few apps that you can get on your phone that, it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's absolutely wonderful to just, if you only have 10 minutes and you're feeling overwhelmed, to just get on Youper or one of the other apps for centering and creating mindful space for yourself, a little peace in the middle of your day. It's good for anybody, whether you have vasculitis or not. It also helps to give you a regained sense of power and control, remembering that this is the huge casualty of this disease, is the power and control that you lose. Mindfulness meditation is something that will remind you that you're a living, sentient, feeling person in the universe, and that is not going to change no matter what your disease does to you. So I'd recommend that.
Great points. I often say that because of my career prior to being diagnosed, I was a martial artist for, it's now 45 years. And I learned to breathe, and I learned to meditate, and I learned to focus. And those things were a huge part of what got me through some times when no medication could help. Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. I really see your point in that. How about just learning to educate oneself as much as possible about vasculitis so you understand the nature of your illness, and especially options, so that you can be a proactive patient and have some sense of control? Because after all, we all sort of feel a major loss of control when this happens. Sarah, you want to take that one?
Yeah, this is definitely right in my sweet spot as an educational psychologist, because the mantra in educational psychology is knowledge is power. And so the whole idea that you gain power when you feel more knowledgeable about something. And when you're able to learn as much as you can, you have a sense, you have like a locus of control. You're able to kind of gain that sense of control again. It's like, okay, I know this is what's going on right now. I may not completely understand it on that molecular level that my doctors do, but I have a sense of where this is going. And that's a sense of power. And that really comes from, like we've said here before, is making those connections with other people, finding a mentor, attending symposiums, listening to the webinars that are out on the VF website, and just really seeking out those resources. I mean, one of the things that I've heard from other vasculitis patients is that they'll call up the VF and it's like, whoa, this whole like mother lode of information that I didn't know it was out there is available to me. And wow, I'm incredibly lucky that I have this at my fingertips. So it's out there, and I can't plug the VF website enough, because it's been such an incredible resource for me. And it has allowed me to feel like I'm more in control of the direction that my disease is heading, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Dana, do you have anything to add right there to that point? Or she said it all?
I really, vasculitis and any disease, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. You were a fully formed, functioning person before this ever happened. And so my advice is always to ask yourself when you have been in situations in your life that have been challenging or difficult, and what did you do? If you've gone through childbirth, you're a part of this club, you've got some mad skills. I mean, there's always something that you have in your inner toolkit, your inner wisdom that you can call on. And so being able to identify that and call on it now is going to be very valuable.
Great points. I just want to echo what you both said. And the only tidbit I would add to that is one of the things that I did learn early on, because there just wasn't a whole lot of information in 2008, or I couldn't find it, one or the other, in 2008, is that I often found information that was not helpful. So go to the right resources. Remember, it's just like you've learned about everything else. When you have medical issues that you're dealing with, talk to your doctor, go to the websites that are recommended for you, and weigh out your own thoughts on these things, but go to the right resources, and don't let the ones that are out there that are not educationally backed up be the ones that drag you down. That would be my only patient advice there. Just in ending this today, I just want to say thank you so much to both of you. Of course, I always love talking to Sarah, because she and I have so much in common to talk about. Dana, you've been a great addition to the conversation today. I also want to just sort of end today by reminding everyone the resources that are out there for you. The Vasculitis Foundation website, vasculitisfoundation.org. It's a great go-to resource for patients with vasculitis, and an educational and supportive resource. You can find information on the various forms of vasculitis. There's a Find a Doctor tab. I refer people to this all the time in the Facebook groups. Just to find someone that knows your disease is a huge fixer. The Vasculitis Foundation the website has a video library. It's growing all the time. It's more than 50 videos. It has some full conferences on there. The 2019 symposium is on there. And of course, the 2020 Road to Wellness webinar series that we've been working on. And also, I don't want you to forget about the Vasculitis Foundation e-news. One of the best things that you can do for yourself is to sign up on the Vasculitis Foundation website for the VF e-news. And what will happen is you'll get an email newsletter that tells you everything that you need to know about what's happening with vasculitis, any research or clinical studies or recruiting that's going on, all these things. Great way to stay in touch. And last but not least, I just want to thank you for your participation. You've both been great today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.